Yeah, hello and welcome to our lecture series, Climate Protection. So last time the lecture from Kerstin Plaß was skipped. He was ill, unfortunately, and it's postponed. I will inform you when it will take place. We have to look for a lecture hall, and then I will inform you via OLAT or email. Yeah, and today welcome our guest Kerstin Plaß. Kerstin Plaß is project manager for climate justice and education at Climate Alliance Tyrol. Today she will present what Climate Alliance is all about and how to become a Climate Alliance municipality, a Climate Alliance company, or an Alliance school, and how Climate Alliance assists its members. Kerstin Plaß is responsible for the coordination of the partnership on the Rio Negro and as well as for the project management climate justice project Climate Arts. We are looking forward to her lecture of today, Climate Alliance European Municipalities in Partnership with Indigenous People, taking local action on global climate change. Hello and welcome, Kerstin Plaß.
Thank you very much. Yeah. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm going to talk about Climate Alliance, as Mr. Pfluger already said, which is a European-wide network of municipalities joining with indigenous peoples or indigenous organizations in the Amazon and in some other regions of the world in order to take local action on global climate change, as you said, and as also the title of my presentation puts it. And of course, this is all about climate change. I don't need to show this graph anymore because this is a lecture about climate protection, but all of you know, just to put it into a frame, that in Austria and in the Alps, we have a situation that is even more severe than in the global average. These warming stripes show it on a very visual very visually that we are having a very severe situation. But back in the 90s, when the Climate Alliance was founded, the situation wasn't better back then, but it was a little bit more promising, and that was the beginning of these partnerships, which was actually initiated by indigenous peoples themselves, by the COICA, which is the Pan-Amazonian umbrella organization of indigenous organizations, and they met with European municipalities back in the 90s and started. I think we think this is a global problem, so we might as well solve it together. And this is when Climate Alliance formed. And the commitment that they established was that here in Europe we need to reduce our CO2 footprint, and people in the Amazon, in our case in Austria, that is the Rio Negro region, the northwest of the Amazon and the northwest of Brazil, they would look after the rainforest and try to protect it. And that works best. I'm going to put that forward. That works best if you guarantee the land rights. But I'm going to talk about this partnership later on. First, I'd like to talk about what Climate Alliance actually is and how it works. So the view back then was that there's this saying that to raise a child, it takes a whole village. So the view was that you do not only need municipalities to take local climate action, but also companies and schools and other players that work together in a network in order to make climate action possible and to really make it fruitful. So ever since 1992, more than 1,000 municipalities have joined Climate Alliance Austria. And in this case, Climate Alliance Austria differs from many other countries, or from most other countries actually, because we also invited companies and schools to join our network. And in Tyrol, there are now about 100 companies that have joined Climate Alliance, because the program is newer than in other regions. but most of the companies actually have joined in Upper Austria because there the program has been working for quite long. And all over there have been about 800 to 900 schools that have joined the network, and some other partners such as dioceses or churches or other associations. And the difference between these main three partners, municipalities, companies, and schools, is that only municipalities pay a membership fee in order to support the indigenous partners in the Amazon, and all of the others, companies and schools, they have more kind of voluntary commitment. Yeah, but I'm going to talk about that in more detail now. So in order to become a Climate Alliance municipality, what do you have to do? In the very beginning, it was very easy, let's say, to become a Climate Alliance municipality. But as this crisis is getting more and more severe, we are also noticing that we have to put stricter restrictions for this membership. And so in order to become a municipality, a member municipality, you need to have an initial consultation where you talk to our colleagues. And this is only the pathway that I'm showing for Tyrol now, because it works differently in every province. But in Tyrol, it's been professionalized quite a lot. And now all of these municipalities have to go through these 5 steps in order to become a member. Then they have to do a climate check, where in the first step they establish some kind of common goals that they want to achieve in order to take climate action. And these goals, they are achieved through a workshop where members of all different action fields come together. So most likely in these workshops also teachers and actors of different companies, for example, restaurants, hotels, and other areas will gather for this workshop to establish their goals until 2030. This is like the framework, the Klimaplan 2030 of the regional government is the framework, and then together after these workshops, they have to take, they have to decide measures in different fields, mobility, what do you call Beschaffung? Administration, on the administration level, and on the I can't find the word now, but on different levels they have to take different, they have to plan different actions. And once they have done it, they need to take, they need to make an official decision, and they need to find a person responsible for coordinating this membership and this partnership and the topic in their municipality. And after that, of course, they also have to inform their population about their membership, and they will get a membership certificate. And so it's still a voluntary admission, it's still a voluntary membership, but it's becoming more and more severe. And what we try to focus on is that these municipalities are leading by example, so that they set new trends in climate action and they build up climate expertise locally, making it an issue involving their population, involving the people. And we can assist these municipalities with action planning and process support. We have different programs, for example, assessing the construction of bike lanes in the municipalities, or we also assist with communication. We assist with awareness raising campaigns. We can produce press relations, but actually it's more on the ground where we support the municipalities with strategic workshops on mobility, and procurement was the word I was looking for. Procurement and soil and land use. So there are different formats and workshops that they can book with us, and we come to their municipality and help them to make a plan. And of course, we also collaborate with the so-called CHEM and CLA regions, which are climate and energy model regions and climate mitigation areas that have been set up by the government, and where different areas can, for example, municipalities in different areas can join in order to become such an area. And then they have this one person that is paid for and that is actually responsible for taking climate action in their municipality. And we cooperate with these CHEM and CLA regions also. And yeah, of course, they have to pay a little membership, which is very little. It's only between 20 and 22 cents per inhabitant. And half of it goes to the regional office, and half of it goes to the project at the Rio Negro, which I coordinate and which I'm going to talk about later. And then there is a little fee for the European-wide coordination that is the same for every municipality, independent of its number of inhabitants. And then there are companies that can also join Climate Alliance. And as I told you, it's a very recent program. I think it's only been working for about 5 years now. But it's becoming more and more professional also. And it's also a very low level approach for companies to get into touch with what it means to be active in this field. So any company that wants to actively contribute to the climate protection and that does not contradict the concerns of our NGO in its business activities can become a Climate Alliance partner. They have to name sustainability as an integral part of their company's mission statement. So they shall commit to sustainability as one of their principles. They need to find a person responsible for the continued implementation, so like a person that we can talk to or work with. And what they will have to do once they become a member is that they will need to do resource accounting in order to monitor their own resource consumption. And this, of course, in order to reduce their greenhouse gas emissions. Then, of course, by themselves, they are obliged or asked to train and further educate their employees. But we also offer training for employees. And they have to communicate this commitment to their employees internally and also externally to show that they are willing to take action against climate change. And these agreed goals and objectives, they are also evaluated regularly. And it's, as I said, it's a very easy introduction to sustainable resource management because in the first step during this process of becoming a member, there's a very holistic analysis of the current situation that's being done by our colleagues, where the companies run through this climate check and define concrete goals and measures that they want to take in their company. And this or the idea behind this program is that they have a role model effect on other companies in their area, and through information and training that their employees also start taking action personally. And this climate check focuses on different fields, similarly to the process that the municipalities run through: energy, mobility, procurement, then of course waste management, soil and water, but also the social level. It's more or less what the 17 SDGs focus on. And these are the fields that the climate check also focuses on. And in addition, our colleagues also give advice on circular economy, if it is a possibility for the company or not. Of course, there are now legally binding there's a legally binding framework which companies have to follow, which is the EU taxonomy, so they can inform what the company should do in order to stick to it, and of course what they can do in order to adapt to climate change. Yeah, and there is this initial consultation, as in every membership process, and then data is collected, which has to be collected by the company itself. Then there will be an on-site inspection, and a report is issued, and then they set goals together, and it's regularly monitored and evaluated. Okay, that's for the companies that want to become a member, and they, of course, they don't have to pay a membership fee, but of course there are also in these analyses, there are also some scope 3 analysis done, which means that we also analyze, this has been started only recently because it's very complex, but the scope 3 analysis means that you also take into account the so-called gray emissions of the company, like for their transport, and all of the surrounding areas that combine together to make up the CO2 footprint of the companies. And it's very difficult actually to assess these scope 3 emissions, but since our commitment is also globally with this partnership with the Rio Negro, we would like our companies to also focus on these gray emissions that they might not be aware of. And one of the most important groups are schools, of course, because children are the future. And so schools can also become members. And in the case of schools, it's only been very recently that we offer this kind of climate check, where we make a check of the building, how it works energy-wise, and stuff like that. But before that, it hasn't been possible. But now we started doing it here in Tyrol. In other parts of Austria, it's not being done, but here in Tyrol, we started doing this climate check for schools also. Yeah, and if they are interested in becoming a member, then we will go to their school and present our work and present our offer, because we have lots of workshops for schools. Then they will establish a team or a coordinating person, and they will decide together. It has to be a unanimous decision. All of the teachers have to agree on joining Climate Alliance during this teachers conference. And then there's an official ceremony. And since we offer lots of workshops and programs, there's this one possibility to integrate the topic into the everyday school life. But of course, they are also asked to do it by themselves and to take initiative by themselves, which they have to prove by an annual report that they have to issue. And yeah, what we ask of them is not only to talk about obviously related topics to climate change, but also to convey visions of cultures in the global south, because since our partnership is with the Rio Negro region, we would also like to our member schools to convey this more holistic approach to their students, and to show them that climate protection is a global problem, And what we would also like them to do is that they work together with the municipalities and so that they support each other mutually in their climate protection activities. And yeah, as I already told, we have these free workshops for all levels and kindergartens. And then there is this so-called MobiCheck, which is a program that was elaborated by the Austrian government, by Klimaaktiv. And it's a close analysis of the mobility behavior at schools during 1 year, where it is assessed how children and teachers travel to school back and forth. And one of the so-called lighthouse programs that we have is so-called Pedibus, which is actually very basic, but it's a program where we assist schools so that children start walking to school again, stimulating this climate-friendly behavior and avoiding parent taxes. And one of the major achievements that has been made through these MobiCheck and Pedibus is that nowadays so-called school street is an official road sign that you can place in front of your school, and you can declare the road in front of your school a school road. And this is this has entered into the STVO in the mobility, no, what's it called, in the traffic law, in the Austrian traffic law. Yeah. And then we have also campaigns which also work together with our municipalities. For example, there's an annual campaign to promote cycling, which is called Tirol Radl in our case, and for schools it's called School Biker. Yeah, and we also assist them with a program that is not only for schools, but when they do school events, then they should do them as a green event. And green events is also one of the action fields that we, one of our action fields of Climate Alliance, but I'm not going to talk about it in more detail now. But green event is some sort of certification that you can apply for if you want to do, for example, a concert or a gathering or a greater event, and you can apply for these different categories of green events, and it is for event promoters to also, it's also, it has a very low level, basic introductory level, and then there are more and more difficult tasks. And of course, the foremost important frame is that during a green event, you have to recycle waste or separate waste, and people have to get their eco-friendly, climate-friendly. And we also offer education for teachers. And then there is another program which is neither for companies, schools, nor municipalities specifically, but it's for everybody, and it's called Doppel Plus, which is an energy and climate coaching for households. And the idea is that climate protection in this case is just a benefit, but actually the main idea is to use energy and resources consciously, so that at the end of the year you have a plus in your household and in your budget, and saved up energy. So that's the main idea of this project, and it's done by voluntary. It's voluntary work. This is why we work together with community workers, and there are regular courses, like I think every half year there are new groups of voluntary people being educated in order to go to these households and do these assessments for people. So the main goals are to, of course, create energy efficiency in these households and resource awareness, but not having to buy a new fridge, but for example, being more aware about light usage or energy usage in the household itself, and only needing minor investments, because this program also is directed to households with a lesser income, a lesser average income. Yeah, so the idea is to protect the environment through the conscious use of resources, and at the same time having a surplus in the household budget. Yeah, and it's about, it also has different topics that it addresses. Energy efficiency on one hand, mobility always is a very big issue, because sometimes it's very difficult also if you, for example, don't speak the language, if you don't speak German, then maybe it's difficult to understand how to use public transport. And so this is also addressed in these coachings. It's also about how to save up energy while cooking. It's about consumption and waste management, about how to use energy correctly, and how to save energy during heating and ventilation. Yeah, and these utility bills, they are also very complex for all of us. So one of the major goals is also to explain how they work and how to read these utility bills. And all of this, of course, in the context of climate protection, but also to bring benefits to these households. Okay, I think, yeah. So by now, more than 1,000 consultations have been carried out. And by 2024, another 500 consultations will be done. So this is about 1,500 households that have been reached. And yeah, what they can save up with these coachings is an average of 200 euros per household annually. And they can, and there have been 650 kilograms of CO2 have been saved up. Yeah, so these are the benefits that come out of Doppel Plus, which is also a program that only works in Tyrol. Yeah. Okay, and now I'm going to talk about the Rio Negro partnership, which is my main focus during most of the time. Which is a partnership with two main organizations in the area of the Rio Negro, which is located in the northwest of Brazil, in the so-called Dog's Head, because it looks like a dog's head on the map. And it is comprised by 3 municipalities. That is São Gabriel da Cachoeira, Santa Isabel do Rio Negro, and Barcelos. And in this whole area that borders with Venezuela and Colombia, there are still 23 indigenous peoples living up till today. And there aren't any clear numbers how many people really live there, but it is estimated that there are about 100,000, but there are they're currently counting the population, and it's very likely that it's more, because it's also a common strategy to communicate a lesser number of indigenous peoples in order to restrict their rights. Because there is a Portuguese saying that says, muita terra para pouco índio, which means a lot of land for little Indians. This is a very racist and also ignorant approach that has been taken by the Brazilian government, not only by Brazilian government, but by many governments, in order to justify the exploitation of these lands. And one of the major threats that has always been present in this area was gold extraction, gold mining. Yeah, and this is what it looks like in the Rio Negro. It is the largest blackwater river basin in the entire world. It's also considered a Ramsar site, and it has more than 700 tributaries, so it's huge, and it irrigates an area, an enormous area that stretches from Colombia to Guyana. And only in this area, there are still these 23 indigenous peoples that live there, but on the entire basin of the Rio Negro, there are a lot more. I think it's about 40 indigenous peoples that still live there, and nowadays there are still 18 languages spoken, and 5 of them are also considered official in this area. And São Gabriel da Cachoeira, which is the main municipality in this area, is considered the most indigenous municipality in the whole of Brazil, with more than 90% of the population still being indigenous or considering themselves indigenous. And of course, the approach is not for Austria or the European municipalities in this climate alliance partnerships to go there and tell the people what to do, but rather to live a real partnership. And we've been doing this for the last 30 years with these 2 organizations called FUIAN and ISA. And FUIAN is this umbrella organization of indigenous organizations in the region. And it established in 1987. And it represents the interests of the indigenous peoples. And it has ever since been assisted by Instituto Socioambiental, which is our second partner in the region, which is a civil rights organization that focuses on defending indigenous rights, its territorial and environmental rights, and assists FUIAN with lawyers, for example, or biologists, in order to, for example, make mappings of the area and biodiversity accounting. And one of the main goals of this entire partnership is to strengthen the local partners institutionally. And for FUIAN, this has worked very, very well because, as you might know, and I'm going to show it later also, this year, the first Ministry of Indigenous Peoples in the whole world was established in Brazil, and it's also led by an indigenous agent, Sonia Guachachara, which is the head of which is the minister of this ministry. And FUIAN was also part of the coordination group in order to form this ministry. So they have become a very important actor in defending indigenous rights in this area. And yeah, so as I told you in the beginning, one of the major problems in the very beginning when we started this partnership was gold mining. And this is not only a threat because through gold mining, mercury enters the water and fish end up dying. And because fish are the basic protein source for these peoples, but it's also very severe because they are sacred places that are integrated in their worldview, in their cosmovision, and they are a scene of various myths and tales about their origins. So threatening their rivers is not only a harm to the food sovereignty, but also to the cultural sovereignty, because they are essential for their productive activities, and they obtain everything for them. And as you can imagine, if I go back to these pictures, they are also the main means of transportation. There do not exist any roads in this area. So if you want to get by, you have to use a boat. You have to use a boat to cover distances of about 500 kilometers upstream. With, of course, there are no investments being made in this area. So sometimes these travels of what for us sounds little, 500 kilometers, can take up to a week. Yeah, if you have to travel upstream or more. So just to give you a notion of what this area looks like. So why did Climate Alliance commit to these ideas that COICA brought to Europe back in the 90s? Why do we want to protect indigenous territories? Well, on one hand, because they are hotspots of biological and cultural diversity. We all know that they are green lungs. And that they are very important for our climate systems. We all know that Amazonia alone is home to about 60% of all animal and plant species in the world. But it's also a millennia-old living and cultural space that has been inhabited by these peoples for thousands of years. And nowadays, still around 300 different peoples live in this area, and they have a very, very broad and cultural richness that has to be conserved. Another striking fact that many people ignore is that we also have to protect indigenous lands, because securing the land rights means protecting the rainforest, because they only make up 5% of the world's population, but they secure more than 80% of the world's biodiversity in their territories. And in our area, I don't know if you can really see it on this map, but in our area, less than 1% of rainforest has been cleared, has been deforested, and in the entire area, it's only 5% that has been cut down so far. And the deforestation only takes place, or mostly takes place, and this is what I was trying to show you, but I don't know if you can see it, and it takes place in those areas where no indigenous territories are established. So these red dots are the areas that we all know from television and media, Mato Grosso and Pará. So these areas that are slowly turning into a savanna, they are not secured by territory rights. But here you can see that there are these lighter gray areas and the darker gray areas. And where the darker gray, that is an indigenous territory, or at least part of it is considered an indigenous territory. So deforestation mostly takes place in these areas that are not, that have not been declared indigenous lands. So that's one of the main focuses, that by self-governing their territories, indigenous peoples guarantee the preservation of the biodiversity in their region. And in our case, FOIAN, our partner organization, guarantees the preservation of the rainforest in this region. And we've always worked with the concept of 3-year projects. And more recently, we've also started a project with the BMK, the Climate Ministry, for building up a network of indigenous producers. And we're planning to continue this project also. And these 3-year projects, that they are funded by the municipalities, by the membership fees that I showed in the very beginning. And I'm going to talk about these different fields of action in more detail now. So ever since the beginning, I told you the main objective was to secure land rights. And one of the major goals was achieved in 1998, when land rights for over 114,000 square kilometers were achieved. And here you can see the recognized territories. But this it's a little bit more difficult than that. Still, you can say that more or less 1.6 times Austria has been declared indigenous land and thereby been protected against deforestation. But this process of declaration as indigenous territory is very complex, and so there are different levels, and there are only 8 territories of these that are marked here that have been homologated, and the homologation is now the official recognition by the Brazilian state, where this territory also enters into a legal register. The first process is the demarcation, to actually say, okay, this land reaches from this part to this part. And this is the first process, which in many cases has taken up to 20 years or more to actually demarcate these lands and say, okay, this is your area. And the latest achievement now was with Uneushi, which is in the very in the lowest part, which on the 28th of April has been designated or has been homologated, to use the official term, by the government of Lula, because during the government of Bolsonaro, no indigenous lands at all were homologated. So this was a very huge threat to indigenous peoples, because they were also talking about taking back these categories. So now that Lula is trying to reinforce these recognitions, is a very important step for the protection not only of indigenous lands, but also of biodiversity. And since it's not putting up these signs that we see on the picture is the first step, but of course you also need other legally binding structures that can support these decisions, these legal decisions. And so this is why so-called PGTAs were elaborated, that are territorial and environmental management plans that exist for already 9 territories. So also some of the territories that have not been homologated already have those plans, because they are some kind of legal background information on how indigenous governance works in this territory. There is one PGTA that works for the entire region, and then there are several PGTAs that work for the different territories. And in the current project, they are trying to complete the homologation of some of the areas that are still not that still haven't been declared indigenous territories. And there are also other strategies. One of them is called a so-called consultation protocol. There is an international directive that is called ILO. I think it's also in English, yeah, International Labour Organization 169, which is one of the international soft laws to protect indigenous peoples against exploration of their territories. And of course, Brazil has ratified this this directive, but it's not implementing it. And so in Brazil, they have developed the strategy to elaborate these consultation protocols that are very easy and quickly readable document for either enterprises or also states that want to explore the region, where they declare or where they explain and inform the state and private companies who they are, how they are organized, and how to consult them if you wanna do a project in their area, and how this could affect the territory. Yeah, so these are also legally legal assistance structures that have been elaborated in one of our projects. And as I told you, there are no roads. There don't exist any roads in this area. So waterways are the only way of covering distances. And of course, there are many rapids and many obstacles, and traveling in this area is involved with high cost. And if you want to protect this area with 500 kilometers of distance in each direction, of course, you have to be present. Yeah, you have to show presence, because it's very easy for a company to invade your territory if there's nobody there to actually take care of it or looking after it. So one of the first initiatives that Climate Alliance took in the 90s was to buy community boats for Pfluger, so that they could, in their organizations, travel to the farther ends. And not only for that reason, also for schools, of course. Children have to go to schools nowadays in this area, and it's easier if they have community boats, or also for some legal actions. Sometimes they have to travel to the city, to São Gabriel, to the municipality, the village, and it's also easier if they do it in groups and they have community boats. And in order to also gap these distances, there has ever been the idea to establish radio communication in the area. So since the very beginning, it was there was investment in renewable energies and radio to bridge these distances. Hence, they established over 200 photovoltaic powered, solar powered radios. And nowadays, more, especially during the pandemic, in the wake of Corona, there was also a large scale investment in solar powered internet, so that they could do their workshops online, which has been very important in the region. And all of these areas that are marked with the red flag, they have already received internet access, which of course you cannot imagine as here, but there is like probably one house that has internet and everybody has to use this internet. Yeah, but still it works. And then of course Corona made it more important, but also climate change is making it ever more important, that sanitation needs to be regulated more, because sometimes the igarapés, these small streams that they would use for water gathering, they dry up and they don't have any more stream water, so that they have to dig to the ground. And so now they have, in some of the larger villages, they have solar powered water pumps, which also, it's the same situation. There is this big water pump in the center of the village, and everybody has to go there to get their water. And it only works, of course, if there is no cloud coverage, which is very difficult in the rainforest. Yeah, but this was started in 2018. And climate change is also a very huge topic in the region, because there are both negative effects of the El Niño and La Niña that are very clearly seen in this region. There are extreme droughts, but also very, very high floodings. And if you take a look at the picture, it's the same place, it's the same spot, the same beach in São Gabriel da Cachoeira. On the top, you see it in 2018, and at the bottom, 2021. And you can imagine that this brings various problems for the people in the region. Drought doesn't only mean dry rivers, yeah, but people are not able to cover these distances anymore, so that they cannot go to the doctor, children cannot go to school, they cannot, they cannot visit their families or anything, and of course, it affects their agriculture. And the same happens if the fields are flooded. But it doesn't mean only that they maybe lose their crop for this year, but they also lose their seed banks for the following years, because of course they are dependent on these seed banks. And so this is a very drastic example of how climate change affects people's everyday lives and affects their livelihoods. And yeah, these pictures, I mean, you might as well think, okay, probably that some were in Asia, I don't know, but it's not normal for these people to go salvage their cassava crop by boat. It's not the case normally. So this is one of the reasons why in this area people started thinking that they need to document these situations better, and that's why so-called indigenous environmental agents have been formed ever since 2008. And in this region, of course, they don't use smartphones or any other tools to plan their year, but they traditionally had an ecological calendar based on the star signs that they saw up on the sky, and they have been documenting these annual cycles orally. But since this project started, they started documenting these annual cycles that also involve rituals and hunting seasons, dry season, reproduction, agricultural processes, all of this. They have started to take note on a daily basis, and now every region in this area has a so-called IMA or has so-called IMAs that observe how climate change is affecting the area in order to develop strategies how they can adapt to these severe changes. Because for them, they know, for example, if a certain frog is laying eggs, then they have to do this and that on the crop, probably, or they have to go hunt that animal, or this animal is having reproduction, or it's time for this and that cultural activity, and all of this has been, it doesn't work anymore for them. So this is why they started educating these IMAs that have become very important agents, not only against climate change, but also against other threats that threat their sustainability on their lands. And one of the main tools in the past, we haven't had any projects in education in the last 10 years, but in the past we also had projects with indigenous schools that are very important in this area, because it's been very, white knowledge has been very present in this area ever since. There was a huge missionary work historically done by the Salesians, not only by the Salesians, but also by the Evangelians. But Salesians were a major threat because they also established I'm missing the word now. I don't even know it in German, but these schools where you internet. It doesn't matter. anyhow, the children were forced to go to these schools, and they weren't allowed to see their families, and they were, yeah, they were forced to stay there. And nowadays, they are trying to, which of course, not only had bad side effects, of course, it's also been useful for these people to have this wide knowledge in order to manage better in a threatening outside world. So I wouldn't say that it's only been bad, but or they wouldn't say it's only been bad, but of course they know that it's a very, very dark past, and they try nowadays to combine it more with traditional language, linking their traditional knowledge to the so-called white knowledge. So that they make the best out of it, because of course they also need this white knowledge, because white techniques are an ever-present threat in their area. So they also need to know how to manage this. But I have the feeling that they can very well live in those worlds parallelly, so they can preserve their own culture and their own traditional knowledge at the same time, while knowing how to use a computer, knowing how to use a mobile phone and stuff like that. And of course, one of the main ideas was also to maintain languages spoken in these areas. As I told you, it's about 17 or 18 languages that are still spoken. So their idea was also, their focus was also to produce school books in their indigenous language. So they were also created during these projects. And since I told you it's a region, a border region, of course there is also a lot of traveling going on, and Corona was a very, very major threat for the area, for the peoples. It was almost like a reminder of back in the days when the first European colonizers came. So it was a real big threat for people in the area. And of course, together with the pandemic, as everywhere around the world, also came fake news about it. And they have a large network of indigenous communicators, which is called Haji Wayuri. And for this work of combating fake news about Corona during the pandemic, in their podcasts and they also had some flyers and radio shows that they were streaming on these radio stations. They won the World Justice Award that was given to them last year in Amsterdam. No, in Den Haag, sorry. Yeah, so this is also one of the projects that has been built up together with Climate Alliance, and it's growing ever more. And now with this new Ministry of Indigenous Peoples that is working in Brazil, it's also very interesting to see how they are using these youngsters to really cover their work on Instagram and in social media. And nowadays, so I think it's been a really upward thriving movement now with this ministry, because they are showing a lot of presence on social media, and they are really, yeah, communicating their issues, their problems on a very visual basis, so that they really know how to use these tools in order to be less invisible to the rest of us. So I think it's a really great achievement for them to use these tools in such an efficient manner. And yeah, this award is only, I think, it only shows how important it is that this work that they do, yeah, not only to combat fake news, but also to be present for those that ignore that indigenous peoples exist and have lots of rights that need to be defended. Another threat in this area, of course, is tourism, and there have been so the approach was to establish ecotourism offers. One of the first areas where it's been done is the Rio Marie, which is one of the tributaries of the Rio Negro. Yeah, and there they started regulating the sport fishing and putting a hold onto illegal fishing. And the village communities in this area, which is the same for almost all of the projects that are realized in this area, they evaluate these projects annually, and the entire village decides if they want to continue or not with the project in plenary. So everybody from children to elderly are involved in the decision, or if they want, are involved in the decision if this ecotourism, for example, offer or any other offer that affects their entire community is going to be continued or not. There also have been projects for farming, for fish farming, that have been set up in some of the regions that are naturally nutrient poor, because the Rio Negro is a black water river, so it's naturally nutrient poor. It doesn't have a lot of nutrients, and this small-scale fish farming serves to ensure food sovereignty. Of course, it's not a huge fish farming. Traditionally, it still works with these two instruments that you see above. But yeah, in some areas it's been necessary to also establish these small-scale fish farming, where they grow their own fish to ensure their food sovereignty. And one of the biggest achievements also is that the agriculture that is traditional in this area has been recognized twice as natural cultural heritage, because it's a very diverse agriculture that works by cutting down very small crops and burning them, and then every 3 years you move the crop, and the crop regrows and reintegrates into the forest. And by this means they have grown a very high diversity in this area. There are about 80 different species of chili known in this area, for example, and about 250 different species of cassava that have all been cultivated by human hand. So this biodiversity was fostered by the people. And this is why it's been recognized as national cultural heritage twice. And of course, nowadays it's important for the people to have a means of income, and this is why we started this project with the Ministry of Climate Action. And in this project, we seek to, or the idea is that these different products that come out of agriculture and of ceramic and articrafts, handicrafts tradition can be used as means of income, so that they can be sold on a fair basis for fair tariffs, not only fair trade, but also fair chain-wise, so that the entire, or that the major part of the money stays with the producer. And so this has been done for these four fields of action: for ceramics on one hand, for Meliponi honey on the other hand, and chili cultivation and product refinement. it's spread all over the area, and different areas focus on different products. The Casa Tyrol is not a project that was started with this collaboration with the Ministry of Climate Action, but it started in 2005, and it's a women-led regional arts and crafts center. And they sell jewelry and wicker and pottery, and it's ever since the beginning been a project that has strengthened the female movement, the indigenous women in this area, because ceramics are traditionally a female task. And in 2013, it was burnt down by enemies, unfortunately, but we rebuilt it with also the money of Climate Alliance. And nowadays it's been expanded because it's really thriving, and it's a very, very good means of income for the people. And it's also very, very important also about Hedgewayuri, I forgot to say this, to create these possibilities, mostly for youngsters, so that they don't have to go to the city in order to find work. And it's one of the ways that Fuyan tries to get in touch with young people so that they stay in their communities and that they have a way of protecting and safeguarding the land rights in their community by having a means of income. And Casa da Pimenta is now one of the establishments where they produce Pimenta Baniva, which is also a project that Climate Alliance has supported since 2005. And agriculture is also in female hands in the Rio Negro. So this is also a project to support regional female farmers in order to preserve the traditional agriculture and also as a source of income. And this is this shows the process of the production of this Pimenta Baniva, where one of these pots, of these small pots, can have up to 50 different types of chili in just one pot. And these pictures, I took them last January, and this is the crop of Donna Dosilla. You can literally see her in her crop on the left. This is her crop where she is with her dog. So the trees, they still lay there on the land, and in between her chili plants are growing. And these chilies that we see on top at number 1, that were the chilies that she gathered at her crop in only 10 minutes. So there are 8 different species that she gathered in less than 15 minutes. So that's really incredible, and I think we have a lot to learn from these people still. And yeah, it's still produced manually, and the production has to be done in couples. So yeah. And then Melipone beekeeping is another way to create income in this area. Melipone bees are bees without stings, so they don't they cannot sting you, but they produce a honey that's been traditionally used for medical purposes, and they are trying now to market this honey as a source of income, and of course maintaining this, not selling it for recreational use but for medical use. And so there are trainings where they show each other how to put up these beehives and how to get the honey. And one of the bigger projects is this Casa das Frutas, where all of the local farmers can sell their food to their harvest. to produce refined products out of their agricultural harvest. For example, dehydrated bars or dehydrated fruits. And it's also a means of registering the local farmers so that they can make money not only by selling to Casa dos Frutos, but also by selling to local schools, because they can be integrated. If they are registered, then they can sell their, then they can be integrated into the National School Alimentation Program and can sell their food to schools. So this is also another way that they can be sustainable regionally and also gain money regionally. And one of the ideas is also to create an organic farmers market and direct marketing next to Casa dos Frutos, where they can also come and sell their fruit if they live closer to the city, for example. Because this is not in São Gabriel, but in Santa Isabel. If you remember the map, it's the one in the middle. But it's also a very small city, but still it's a city. Yeah, and this I already told you about. So since 2023, there is this Ministry of Indigenous Peoples, and Fuian was also part of the Transitional Commission, and some of its members have also nowadays also are part of the ministry, and so I think this is very, very striking that they, through this little amount of money per person that Climate Alliance municipalities pay annually, such big achievements have been made. Of course, Climate Alliance is not the only association that has supported Fuian and the region, but we are it's been the longest partnership that they have had. No other institution has been there for as many years as we have. So we've been there for 30 years supporting Fuian. And I think the most striking questions nowadays is not, because this of course is a question that oftentimes comes, why should we continue this work after 30 years? Don't you think that they have received enough money? And all these questions come up so often. But I think we should, of course, continue collaborating with our money, because there's so much more that now we have to learn from these people, because they have very well covered for their part. But where is our effort? Are we really able to say that our commitment to reduce our CO2 footprint has been achieved? I don't think so. And I think through this partnership, we can also pay some sort of indemnization to these people for preserving the forest for us, because we are destroying our forests and they are preserving it for us. And they are really, yeah, I think it's really admirable, and we should actually try to learn more from them for our future. And of course, we try to do this on a regularly basis. We invite 2 or 3 members from the region to travel through Austria and give talks to people here, so that this mutual learning also takes place here. But yeah, I think there is still a long way for us to go. I think they have done their work. Yeah, and of course, I think our commitment should be a commitment to a future where we have sustainable agriculture, where we conserve our resources, where we have clean water, where North and South have a dialogue with each other, where we have an intergenerational contract and protect our environments and our biodiversity. And one of the easiest ways is to reduce our consumption. which is also one of the easiest ways to reduce our footprint. Yeah, and that's that. And I think we don't need to be too pessimistic, even though it's been said that it's very likely that during this decade we're going to hit the 1.5 mark for the first time. But still, we are, I hope most of us are trying to avoid the 2-degree mark. So the future is still in our hands, and